Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Dave Vishen, Business Development Representative here at EquipSoft. In today's webinar, we will be discussing EquipSoft's reporting strategy and cover exactly how it can help you get more out of your data. Our webinar will run approximately 30 to 45 minutes in length. It will include a presentation, a short demonstration, and then, of course, any questions and answers we received at the end. So now I would like to introduce our product manager and today's presenter, Dan Rowe.
Thanks very much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I think I've got some great things to show you about our EquipSoft reporting strategy. I'm going to work through, as Dave said, I've got some slides to give you an overview of what's going on, and then I'm going to be jumping back and forth to the software a little bit to show you some demonstrations on how you can use some of the features that we're just discussing to do some quick reporting and get more out of your data. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. An overview of the reporting strategy is there on the screen. I kind of look at it as 4 puzzle pieces, because reporting really isn't a silver bullet that does a one-stop solution. There's a lot of pieces to reporting, and what people think of reporting in the past, printing a piece of paper, a static output, some information from your, compiling various tables and things into some kind of report that you'd hand off to a superior or boss or something like that. That kind of reporting thinking has kind of gone away, given all the other technologies and mobility and the way you can slice and dice data more rapidly. And so our strategy takes advantage of a bunch of technologies offered by Microsoft, and also some features that EquipSoft has built into the software as well. So we think of it in these 4 quadrants. The upper left, the red quadrant, standard reports and charts. There are reports that are native to EquipSoft. You can launch them from inside the application. They're programmed by a developer, and they present you, a certain set of data. Historically, those reports were relatively static. What I'm going to show you today is how, with the latest version of EquipSoft, they're actually interactive as well. There's also business charts that are presentable right on the role center. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the concept of a role center, with EquipSoft 2013, there is a role center that each user, when they log into the application, gets presented with some key information that's important to that particular role in the organization. And as a result, they are able to see key pieces of data, perhaps some reports that they run regularly, menu options and things like that are presented to them without having to hunt around through the application to find those things. So that's what we refer to as the standard reports and charts, and we'll take a close look at that momentarily. The green quadrant on the right, Selfserve, very powerful area of the application. There's some pretty neat things that are built into EquipSoft 2013 around charting. Gives the user, empowers the user to create their own charts and gather some data on their own. They can also integrate or export information to Excel very easily, and I'll show a little bit of that today. But probably the most exciting piece is something called Power BI, which is an architecture presented or developed by Microsoft. It's actually a combination of a bunch of different tools, Power Pivot, Power View, Power Query, Power Map. These are all tools that make up the suite of the Power BI, and we'll look a little bit at that and how that functionality gives lots of ability to create your own reports in this concept of self-serve. The bottom left quadrant, the orange, the business notifications. There are notifications built into the application based on a trigger event, some kind of action that occurs. Can cause emails to happen, can cause reports to be generated, things like that. The SharePoint alerts, you can tie SharePoint into the equation and use the alert functionality within SharePoint. And as well, you could use reporting services from SQL to generate notifications as well. And finally, the bottom right, dashboards and insights. Lots of buzz in the industry around business intelligence and being able to model data and get deep insight on how the business is performing, aggregating large volumes of data over long periods of time and seeing trends. All that's available through, again, the Power BI suite, SharePoint, portals, there's KPIs, And we'll take a closer look at some of these pieces today as we go through the presentation. So where we're going to start, we're just going to walk our way around the 4 pieces of the puzzle today. And so where I'd like to start is on the standard reports and charts. And I'm going to jump right into a demonstration of how some of these new features are handled in EquipSoft 2013. What I've got up on the screen is EquipSoft 2013 Parts Manager Role Center. So what this is, the concept of a role center, as I was talking to you before, the parts manager has some things that he needs to concern himself with on a regular basis. When he logs into EquipSoft 2013, he's immediately presented with his role center, which has been tailored to show him the things that are most critical to him. And what you see are these, what we call queues or stacks. Down the left-hand side, the sales activities, where you see, sales quotes that are open. There are 0. But there is 1 open order. You can see a delayed shipment. There's 1 of those. The idea here is, rather than what you might have done before is run reports, maybe you had to print a piece of paper or launch some kind of routine that went out and fetched some data and presented back to you how many delayed orders you might have. Here, you're able to see right on screen that you have 1 delayed order. You don't have any partial shipments, so I don't need to go in and look at that particular queue, but I may want to go in here and take a look at this delayed order queue. Launches me immediately into the delayed orders. I can see exactly which one it is, and from here I can dig in deeper into the application and learn more about this delayed order and expedite some things to get that order back on track. So we consider that, although it's not what one would think of as a traditional report, it is part of the reporting strategy, the ability to present this data at a glance right there on your role center, so you're not hunting around and launching routines and things to figure out the critical pieces of your business. Another example of a type of report that you can get to, right off the role center is over here is something called a trailing sales order. Now there's several different, these are called business charts, and there's several of them that are in the pre-built for you. A developer needs to build these charts for you. You can place them on your role center, but the neat thing about these charts is they're interactive. And so I can go in here and change these to, a quarterly presentation of my trailing sales orders. I can also hover over and get some information, but I can also click on that chart and again drill in to the source data that's behind the chart and then do further investigation from there should I need to. And that's called a business chart. It's an interactive chart. It can be placed on the role center. Can be tailored, through development. Can be tailored to your business and be very useful as a quick tool to see detailed information. Now, one other thing is I mentioned native reports, and those native reports are the reports that are written inside EquipSoft. You would have, those customers out there listening would have had reports that they've launched through EquipSoft through a menu item or something like that, and those reports were generally fairly static reports. I'm going to demonstrate to you now an example through the new reporting technology, how what used to be a very static report can now be considered a very interactive report. We've got a part for the role center down here called My Reports, and the reason I put this here is I just wanted to extend the usability of this a little bit more. I may have a report that's out there on a menu somewhere, and I use the report every day. And rather than going and pecking around for that menu or having a developer come in and modify something so that report is more readily accessible to me, I can actually manage my reports. I can come in here. I know the number of the report, and I would have to make sure I know that number. And I've got something called the sales dashboard. I go ahead and add that to my reports. It's now available to me right here on my role center. I don't have to go looking anywhere else for it. I can go ahead and hit open, and I'm immediately launched into my sales dashboard. In this particular case, I've got some parameters that I can feed into it. I may go ahead and change some of those parameters, but at some point I'm going to launch the report. And you can see this is a lot different from what you might have expected in previous versions of EquipSoft, or perhaps in other applications when you think of the concept of a report. This is a pretty visual report that gives lots of information about my top 5 customers and my top 5 items. So it's pretty neat. It shows me a bunch of stacks here. I can see that the red ones are sales, the green ones are profit, and when I hover over, it actually gives me the ability to drill in, even from this report. So if I'm looking at this report online, I know that top 5 customers, when I click on one of those stacks there, I jump into the customer that particular column is related to. Similarly, down here with the items, I can do the same thing and be able to jump in to an item. It gets a little bit deeper yet. If I go down below, this particular report has been designed to show more detail at the bottom. So it's got an item list with some sales information. And again, I'm able to hover over these quantities that are here, and I can drill into those. Now, what's interesting here is it's actually launched another report. So we've got reports embedded inside of other reports, so I can drill down and see what actually made up that $57,000. Okay, so not the same kinds of reports that you'd be used to in previous thinking. These are interactive reports, and the ones that I'm talking about right now are actually embedded inside EquipSoft, can be placed on your role center and launched and then be interactive as well, drilling into more information. So back to the presentation. I just want to move on to the next quadrant in the reporting strategy, which is the self-serve area. And when we think about self-serve, we think about being able to do things for yourself, rather than having a developer involved or some IT group or perhaps a consultant, something like that. What we're trying to do is empower the user to be able to extract the data they need at the time that they need it. That's our self-serve quadrant. What I'm going to do is, again, jump back into a little demonstration here to show you some ways that the self-serve can be used. So again, I'm back into my Parts Manager role center. I'm just going to very quickly go over to my items. I'm looking at an item list here. Now, as part of this demonstration, although some of the things that I'm going to do are not specifically related to reporting, they do enhance the ability of the reporting. So as an example, there's some ways that I can tailor this list. I can right mouse click on my column headings here and decide that I don't want to show certain things. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove some fields because they're just noise to me. And go ahead and do that. Now when I hit OK, you notice that the screen has refreshed and it's presented me with a different view of my data. Now what I can also do is apply some filters. So maybe I'm going to look at all the items in my list that have a unit cost that exceeds a certain dollar value. So now you can see that I've filtered down my list. My unit cost is everything over $25,000. I want to add something else to this. You can see that I can add filters for anything that's in the visible columns, but I can also go in and add filters for any other columns. So what I'm going to do is grab as I scroll down, you'll see that there are tons of fields on the item, but I'm going to grab the quantity on hand field. I want to look at only the things that I actually have in inventory. Okay, so now my list has shortened up considerably. These are the items that have a cost over $25,000 with an on hand greater than 0. The other neat thing I can do with this now is save this. So I'm going to save this as my on hand over 25K. It's asking me if I want to refresh my menuing. I say yes to that, and now you'll see right over here, I have the new view saved for me, so I can always come back in and grab it. If I click on the items, the main menu for items, I get all the items that show up. If I click on the new view that I created, I now have a short list of items. I can save that and reuse that, so I don't have to continue to keep building this view every time I go along. Pretty cool, because now I've got this view, I can take this view and do some other things with it. I can send this view directly out to Excel, a little icon on the ribbon there. Okay, so what it's done is actually sent that out to Excel, and what I can see here in Excel is the exact same view in Excel that I saw inside EquipSoft. Same filter criteria has been applied, and the same column layout has also been applied. The other thing you may notice here is that I've got this date and time stamp sitting at the top of this, and this is really powerful stuff now. If I've taken this list, I could hand it off to somebody else in my organization, and rather than have to continue to send this to them every day, I could actually instruct them to just go to the Dynamics Nav tab within Microsoft Excel, and by simply using the refresh, if you keep your eye on this date time here, the refresh automatically fetches the data from EquipSoft and represents it here for me. So this is a dynamic filter. Every time a new item comes in, if I add an item that costs $25,000 and I have some on hand, it's going to suddenly show up on this list. So it's an interactive filter, very simple way to get a simple list out to people. Now the other thing I can do with this list, again, all in the name of trying to provide the user the ability to extract information from the system on their own, I could look at this list and decide that I'm more of a visual person and I want to be able to see this list in a different way, not just as a simple list, but I actually want to see it as a chart. So I can go ahead and chart this list. I'm going to go in here and just do this quickly so that you can get a an idea of what I'm talking about, I'm going to put a dimension on here of number, and I'm going to go over here and grab my unit cost. And immediately, it's plotted a chart now with my unit cost for each item. Now it's very easy to see where the low items are versus the high items, as opposed to looking on a long list and perhaps not being able to spot the ones. Here, when you see it in a visual manner, you can see them very quickly. Now, what I can also do is add additional criteria, additional measures to this. So now I've got two different bars on there, a unit price and a unit cost. Okay, so very visual. Can have this easily available to the users, as opposed to looking at a list or running a report and printing something out. It's available to me all the time. I can take this and actually tailor it even farther. Perhaps the graphing that I just did there isn't ideal for the audience that I'm trying to do this for, so maybe I want to change something about it. I can actually dress it up a little bit if I'm trying to use it for a presentation. I may want to do something like this. Maybe put another title, on the items, something like that, and show that. And when I hit OK, you can see how the chart changes now. I get some nice descriptors over here. It's a little easier to see immediately that this particular item has a price that's hugely deflated for the cost of the product. I obviously want to be looking into that immediately. I'd like to see those red boxes above the blue stacks on all cases. So very quick, easy thing to do, great visualization. And the great thing about this, I can take this one step farther just to wrap up this part of the demo. And I'm going to just do a real simple thing here. I'm just saving this off. I'll just show you what happens now when I go back to my role center, because perhaps I don't want to go looking into the items every time I want to see that chart. What I can do here on my role center is tailor this role center. I can add a chart part. I can customize this chart part, and there's my item chart. And there it is right on my role center, so I don't even have to go searching around for it anymore. So pretty cool stuff. You can see that everything I did here didn't require a developer. It's just a regular user using the software, manipulating some parameters, some settings, configurations, and being able to provide some pretty powerful reporting abilities without actually ever running a report. You're walking into your software, you're logging in the morning, you go into the role center, and there you are looking at a fairly complete look at some of your items there. So that was the self-serve, just a quick demonstration of how one might do that. Let's talk a little bit more about the Power BI for Excel concept. This whole Power BI suite is made up of these four pieces. I mentioned them briefly earlier, but let's just talk quickly about what those are. Power Pivot is a data modeling tool, so it allows you to actually create data models directly inside Excel, relate some tables, show how they're linked, make some formulas up, combine some data, things like that, and build that model directly in Excel. You don't need a business intelligence tool for it. It's referred to as the self-service aspect of business intelligence built right into Excel. Power View, another component, allows you to explore visualizations of that data, get different ways of presenting it. As I was just showing you earlier, I mean, sometimes looking at a list is not as powerful as being able to see it in a chart and being able to quickly identify where there may be issues with your data. Power Map, another visualization tool to look at geography, so a map of your sales area, for example, and be able to see where your customers are on that map. Those kinds of visualizations inside Power Map are pretty powerful, and also Power Query, which is relatively new, but exciting technology nonetheless. What Microsoft is doing is trying to make data analysis friendly to the users. So you're able to use Power Query and actually use plain English, much like we do with our search engines, typing in some sort of standard question inside a search engine, and the search engine goes off and figures out what it thinks you want to see. Power Query does that with your data. So you can ask questions like, show me the sales in North America for the year 2013. And it will do the analysis. It'll pull out, extract some of the key phrases inside that question and be able to present you the data. When you extend Power BI to Office 365, that's when things start to get really neat, because now Office 365 is a cloud-based Office suite giving you all the same power of Excel and Word and things like that, but now you're also combining it with the Power BI for Excel, so the four pieces that I just spoke to you about. You're also introducing now Power BI Site, a website that you can use then to house your Power BI suite of reports and tools and be able to collaborate over those sites. There's also the Power BI Q&A, and again, another way to allow you to explore through natural language, and as well the Power BI app, which I'll mention again a little bit later. Right on the Windows Store, I can go out and get this app and then use that on my Windows Phone or my Surface tablet to access my data remotely. So what I'm going to do now is just jump out again to another quick demo on how some of the Power BI tools can be used. Okay, we'll start by just showing you a report here. This is a really simple report that I built using Power Pivot and Excel. And so what you see over here is a traditional pivot table showing me by city my parts sales and my service sales dollars. I also charted that so I can see those charts in a pie chart. Again, the visualization makes it a lot easier to very quickly see that in the Waco area there is the most sales, being the green piece of the pie. I also have what's referred to as a slicer down here. And what's neat about the slicer is I can go ahead and select an individual that I want to have, a salesperson in this case, and I immediately see both of those, the table and the chart, reflecting this particular salesperson's parts and service sales. Pretty neat. Very flexible. Again, traditionally this might have taken 1 or 2 reports to run. In some of the older software you would never even have been able to get the pie chart very easily, but here I can combine this information into one very simple chart and then distribute this to my users and they can use it to analyze data. The other piece of this I mentioned was around mapping and being able to visually see across a map of North America, for example. This is a similar representation of the same kind of data, but it's using some visualizations with the map. The colored circles and the size of those circles are representing the dollar value in various regions of North America. I can still use the same filter criteria. So I can actually click on the individual salesperson, it grays out the others, and I can easily highlight where exactly the salesperson's been doing most of their work. Now let's take a moment then and these are pretty neat reports, but I'll show you just how easy it is for someone to create this kind of report. Before I get into it too deep here, let's have a look at the underpinnings that have allowed this report to be created, and this is where we get into the Power Pivot. You'll see there's another tab up here, and I have something called Manage, which allows me to get in and actually look at the data management of, and this is where I'm building my data model. So this is the Selfserve model. I don't have a business intelligence cube out there that someone's worked on. This is just me putting some data together. So I have to know a little bit about the relationship of the data, and I can define that relationship through a diagram view here where I connect the various tables together. I can see how they're connected. So I have to understand the data model that I'm trying to build. That may take a particular skill set, but it's not a developer. It's more of an analyst kind of person, someone in your organization that has good knowledge of the information that they're trying to extract from the data. So I can go ahead and I can set that kind of information up. And then what I can do is go ahead and create a pivot table straight from here. So let's go have a look at that. I'm going to do a new worksheet. Starts me off with a new worksheet, and for those of you familiar with pivot tables, you're in great shape because that's all this is really right now that I'm working with. I can go over here, and the reason I'm seeing the different tables over here is because that's how I set up my data model with the relationship. So I can go ahead and grab city as one of the rows. I can go down and grab the amount on the sales invoice and the amount on the service invoice. And there I am very quickly with my table of sales in the various towns in North America. Now, one other thing I can do very quickly, I can click on my salesperson and add a slicer. And now I've gone and got that slicer there. So when I do select my particular salesperson, immediately my table reflects the results of that filter. So a very quick way of doing filtering. Didn't take a lot of effort there once you know how to do it. And if you're familiar with pivot tables, then you're in great shape. Now, the other thing I can do here, we saw on our initial report that I had shown you, there was a chart, and I'm going to add it to my existing worksheet. There it is. So now I'm looking at my chart, and again, I can take the same chart, add the city, add my amounts, and now I see that I've very quickly charted the same information that's in the table on the left. I've now put in a chart. Last piece I need to do then is just tie this slicer by selecting my report connections. I tie this slicer to the chart that I just created, and right away I can see them both changing as I filter on my salesperson. So pretty easy stuff. Again, it's connected back to my data that I have inside my EquipSoft ERP system. So really all a user has to do once this report is generated is they really just have to get into doing the refresh. It's got a connection directly back to the data sources. So now you're just refreshing the report and seeing updated information daily or weekly, whatever time frame it is that someone might use this particular report. One last piece to this, we saw that neat map that was on the beginning there. I'm going to go into this thing. This was one of the components of the Power BI suite. I go ahead and select my Power View, and it goes and slips in another tab into my book. And I can go ahead, and you'll notice when I get in here now to look at cities, Power View's already recognized that city, it's got that little globe there, it recognized that city is actually a plottable mapping element of my customer, which is pretty neat, so it knew that right away. I can go ahead and select that. I'm just going to do the exact same things that I did earlier, grab an amount off of both of these other data tables, and there it is, simple little chart. I'm going to take this chart and I'm just going to expand it a little bit bigger so that it's filling up the whole page, and the reason I did that is because very simply I'm just going to go up here and select map. And immediately what Power View has done is converted the same data set that I captured in that little table, it's now mapped it for me so I can see where on a map that sales information applies. Now the only piece I'm missing, I need to go up here and I'm going to grab my salesperson code from my customer list and I'm going to drop it in here to the colors, and all of a sudden I see the same chart that I had before. I got a map, I've got my circles, the circle sizes are representing the amounts, and the colors are representing the salesperson, and again, I can go ahead and click on this, and I'm seeing that salesperson's sales activity in a particular region of the United States. So all fairly straightforward stuff that an end user could learn to do fairly quickly because it's inside a tool that they're used to using and have used for a long time, being Excel. They mainly need to learn a little bit more about pivot table and then, of course, the Power BI suite itself to be able to manage. But as you can see there, it's not extremely difficult to do. The Power Pivot and Power View add-ins that I just used are add-ins to Excel. They come with 2013, so I can go ahead in here and just go ahead and turn those on. So I'm with Office 2013. I can see them right there. If you've ever added add-ins to Excel, same idea. Let's talk about notifications quickly. There are some business notifications in the software. I mentioned there was a few different ways to do that. There are the event notifications where they're triggered by events within EquipSoft. So I may have a receipt come in and I want to make sure a technician or somebody knows about that parts receipt coming in so that they can carry on with a service order that they were working on. That's an action or an event that occurred inside EquipSoft, and that event can be captured then and trigger an email to an internal source, or it could be an email to an external source as well. I could use SharePoint. And as I mentioned earlier, using standard SharePoint stuff like alerts and data refreshing, I can have those reports readily available for my users through a SharePoint portal. And I can also use SQL Server report services. There's lots of folks out there familiar with that. Being able to manage your reports through SQL, distribute them, use RSS feeds, things like that, that again push the information out to you as opposed to having to go hunt around to see if there's anything going wrong in the business. The final quadrant, dashboards and insights. This is where we get into true BI. When people talk about business intelligence, this is really where they're referring to where you've got data models and cubes that have been pre-built, or perhaps you have to build them yourself, depending on the types of systems that you're using. The interesting thing about it is it uses that same Power BI tool set. So instead of me having to go in and build that model where I related those tables inside Excel through the Power Pivot Manager, the models and the cubes that I provide for BI act as that model for me, and I use those with the same tools I used with Power BI. So I could create the maps, I could create the pivot tables, I could create the charts. Everything I did in that little demo, I could do using the data models and cubes if I had them available to me. And you can extend this out again to SharePoint and any other portals if you want to provide access to that for other folks. The interesting thing that Microsoft is, this is just a chart explaining, sort of the direction of why these self-serve models seem to be getting some traction. The red line is sort of a traditional way of introducing business intelligence. And in order to build those data models, it takes fairly good skills and knowledge of the system and a lot of time to kind of come up with all the things that people are going to want to ask for and build a data model so that you can support the types of questions that they're asking and allow them to build the reports that they need to build. Then you got to go out and you got to build those reports. And often It's very expensive, very time-consuming, and traditionally, a good high percentage of pure BI implementations have a failed launch because it takes so long and they never get enough traction and they lose the interest of the users. The Excel model allows you to incrementally build it, self-serve, self-build those data models as more questions come up or more ideas on how to interpret the data or investigate more in different directions. You're able to add on to it fairly easily without having to get a technical person building a business intelligence model. And that's the green curve, making it's easy to start with and gets you going quickly. What we provide from EquipSoft is a data warehouse with some cubes pre-built for you in all these different modules. Out of the box, you're able to access some highly sophisticated, calculations related to sales and purchasing and so on, so you don't have to think about how the profit calculations are done or how the on-hand calculations are done. All those are dealt with for you. And then from there, we also provide templates for these modules, so you'll have an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of templates in them to be able to get graphs and different business intelligence presentations from the data. And this is a traditional cube model, so you're building a cube, you would schedule that out and make sure that cube is getting regenerated on a weekly or daily basis, depending on the frequency that you need. So again, getting back to the Power BI, all these same tools apply to the business intelligence, the insights and dashboards quadrant of our reporting strategy. The tools are the same. How the data gets to those tools is different in that you're using a data warehouse instead of a self-serve model. So as I mentioned, you'll get some templates in the background screen there. You can see, finance and inventory and manufacturing. Those are examples of the spreadsheets that come with the business intelligence package. And then you can see inside each one of those spreadsheets, in this case the inventory spreadsheet is there, and you can see that there are multiple tabs down at the bottom giving you examples of the types of reports that you might use. And then you can, of course, build on top of those or start fresh and make your own dashboards. And I just want to talk about mobility. It's always a key question when we're talking about reporting. People want to get information where they are on the devices that they have with them at the time. Mobility is a hot topic. It's not lost on us. We understand that. EquipSoft 2013 can be accessed anywhere that a browser, anywhere you are that you have access to a browser in the internet, you can get access to EquipSoft through what you're seeing here on the screen is referred to as a web client. So this could be run on a tablet computer. I don't have anything installed on there with respect to EquipSoft. However, I can go to my browser, I can key in a particular URL, and there I am, launched into my Parts Manager Role Center. There are some limitations to it, but for the most part, it's a full-fledged interface for my Parts Manager user. Some of the charting doesn't render so well on a web client, so you'll notice there that I don't see the charts from my Role Center that we were looking at earlier, but I do see my reports and I see all the stacks and things. So if I was at home and there was an emergency back at the office and I needed to get access to look into it, I don't need to be using remote desktop and all this stuff. I can actually access from the device that I'm on or have in my hand at that time. I can also use SharePoint, as we discussed, and of course with SharePoint then I can access it on a phone or any other device that I have a browser. I can get into SharePoint and then I can start using the business intelligence reports that I've housed up there or the self-serve reports. All the stuff that I've covered there with the Power BI suite could be housed on my SharePoint site and then accessible for anyone who has access to that site. And finally, there's also a Power BI app on the Microsoft Windows Store. I can go ahead and for free download that, and that gives me access to, I get the app, I can connect it up to my reports, and now I can just use an app on my Windows device and keep in touch with what's going on back at the office. So lots of options for mobility. Just want to point out, the direction that we've gone with our strategy. We're very tightly bound with Microsoft. EquipSoft is built on a Microsoft foundation, as is the database with SQL. The integration to the Office tools, and Power BI is no exception. Using all of the Office tools and integrating back to our EquipSoft database. Microsoft is considered by the Gartner Group to be in the one of the leaders in business intelligence and analytics with the tools that they are providing, and makes for a great partner to be with to build out our tools. So that wraps up our quadrants for our reporting strategy. I hope that made it clear the components that are available to you. There are reasons to use certain ones, and they all have their place in the strategy, and they all have their place in your business. It's just a matter of figuring out, which ones make sense at the time. The Power BI suite for both self-serve reporting and dashboards and insights is an extremely powerful part of the reporting strategy. If you have any questions, now would be the time to bring those up. You can see at the bottom of this final slide, if you go to our website, you can actually get access to a document that essentially covers what I've discussed here today. You can email Dave or email info@EquipSoft if you have any other questions. So Dave?
Yeah, thanks very much, Dan. Sorry. All right, everyone. At this time, as Dan said, we would like to go through some of the questions we received during the presentation. Dan, the first question came from Ed, who asked about the map, the salesperson map that you had up. He said, what map program does that integrate to?
It's actually built inside of the PowerView tool, so it's actually not integrating to any other outside mapping tool. It's part of the PowerView and the PowerView tool itself. Maybe you going through Bing Map or something like that. I actually don't know the details of the underpinnings, but there's no additional software that is installed in order to use that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
The next question we had was whether or not Power Pivot was available for 2009 or if it was just in the 2013 offering.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, the Power Pivot aspect of it and that self-serve is really an element of Microsoft Excel, and so it's not directly linked to EquipSoft. And so what I mean by that is you could use it with EquipSoft 2009, but it's more important that you understand that there's an Office version limitation to it. So Microsoft Office 2013 comes with all of that stuff bundled in with it, free. So if you have Microsoft Office 2013 and you're still running EquipSoft on the 2009 platform, you could actually use the self-serve features there. As far as the insights and dashboards, those cubes have, the cubes that we have out of the box are built for EquipSoft 2013. I can't say for sure how difficult it would be to use those cubes for 2009 because, there's been feature changes between 2009 and 2013, but it's not to say that it couldn't be overcome and perhaps used then for 2009. Maybe I'll just add one last piece to that. If you were on Office 2010, you can also download a free version of Power Pivot, and you could use that and connect it to your EquipSoft 2009 or 2013, use the self-serve features. It does have some limitations. Not all of the Power BI tools are available in Office 2010, that's all.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Next one we have from Craig. He asked about, pertaining to the generic reports, he asked if it was the behind the scenes or the background code, is it SQL, and is it viewable in order to apply any customizations that they might want to do?
Sorry, which reports was he referring to?
The generic reports, the standard.
Oh, the sales the sales dashboard that I brought up there.
Right.
Yeah, those that sales dashboard is written in what's referred to as RDLC, which is an acronym that basically is explaining the new reporting language. But all told, it's using Visual Studio. So if you're a developer and you're familiar, or you have technical folks in your business that are familiar with Visual Studio, it's a fairly common development platform. That's where the report, you do some of the design inside EquipSoft, and then the visualization of it, the layout of the report, and that you do through Visual Studio, and it's looking directly at the SQL tables at that point. I think that, did I answer everything about that question?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Craig, if not, feel free to type again. But we'll try to get to a couple more here. Can business events send emails to people outside our company?
Yep. Yes, it can. Now, so you could have a sales invoice be emailed to the customer that invoice applies to, as an example. So yes, you could do that.
Okay. And if I want to change the BI cubes, can I do that myself?
Yeah, there's a tool to do that, and so you'd obviously need some training on the tool. It's a cube management tool, but it's very open architecture, and so you'd have to work with our our technical team to get trained up on that. But yes, you could modify your cubes. Not uncommon for people to have their own analytics that they need to build out. So yes.
Okay, that concludes our questions. It concludes our presentation today. The webinar has been recorded and will shortly be available on our website, EquipSoft.com. So on behalf of Dan and the entire EquipSoft team, we sincerely thank all of you for taking the time to join us. If you have any other questions, as Dan said, about EquipSoft, feel free. We'd be happy to assist you in any way we can with the contact information that you see on your screen there. So with that, thanks again, everyone. We hope you join us again in our ongoing series of webcasts, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
The organizer has ended the session.